You are listening to the Showbiz Side Hustle podcast, powered by PerformerPreneur. I am your host here, Nicole Louise Geddes, and together we'll be delving into all of the ways that a showbiz side hustle can support you now and long into the future. So sit back, relax, and listen in, and together let's get inspired to take action to create the life, future, and business of your dreams. This episode is sponsored by the Showbiz Side Hustle Handbook, available on Kindle and in paperback over on Amazon. Follow the simple tasks laid out over 3 easy-to-action sections and effectively build a strong business foundation for a successful showbiz side hustle. And welcome back to today's episode of the Showbiz Side Hustle podcast, powered by me, PerformerPreneur. And this week, I'm bringing in an expert to talk to us about values. If you have been listening to my podcast so far, you will notice the sequence. I talk about a topic and then I bring in an expert who goes that level deeper, who we can really learn from. And hopefully, Cally, you're going to give us some actions that we can take immediately. And then I go on to some worries and some wins, and I bring in some members to talk you through their process so that my audience, Cally, can see that it's absolutely possible for them too. So I've said your name a few times now. Please welcome to the stage, Cally. Hello, my darling. Please introduce yourself and your business, and then I'll talk a little bit more about how I know you and why I absolutely love you.
Oh, I love this. Thank you so much. My name is Cally Stewart. So I am a success psychologist. I work with women to understand what formulates their identity and how they can really uplevel it, particularly within patriarchal societies and systems where women naturally don't always necessarily see the disadvantages that they are at. And what we do is really help them to ramp up every bit of who they are unapologetically so that they can go out into the world and create a life and business that they love.
You practiced that. That was bloody good. Oh, excuse my language. That was good. And you can all see instantaneously why I absolutely love Cally and why I'm drawn to her. She knows her message. She knows her expertise. And she shows up like a showgirl. Those of you that know me and listen to me, I have my signature talk, Show Up Like a Showgirl. And Cally, I really feel that you show up. You're not scared of showing off. Showing up is good. Getting that message out there. And that's why I was drawn to you. So for the benefit of the listeners, Cally is my mentor currently as well. Going back a year or so, she came into the membership to talk about values, and it really, really sticks out in my mind and many of the members' minds. What you said gave us such light bulbs and permission to, push through these beliefs that we're going to talk about, these values that we've inherited, and rewrite them. And I'm so excited to give this information to my listeners. So where do we start? Where do we start? Tell me where we start.
All the way at the beginning, all the way at the beginning. Now, you will hear this from almost any professional, any coach, any expert, anybody that really knows what they're talking about when it comes to values and beliefs, right? They start at the very beginning. The moment that we are out of the womb, all of those layers of conditioning start to really come upon us. And for a lot of people, I don't think they really understand the depth of actually the impact that creates. The family that you are born into, the caregivers that you have, the people that raise you, really from the day you are born, condition you into what you should think, feel, behave, do, what you value in the world, what you don't value in the world, what you believe, what you don't believe, all comes from those first few years with the people that you're born to. So all the way at the beginning is where we should always start.
I've just remembered a feeling's just come up for me from when we heard you talk in the membership. I suddenly have this pang of like, oh my God, what damage am I doing to my kid? Because it's true, we are responsible for so much, and our parents and caregivers have been responsible so much. So it is, problem's not the right word, I guess. It's a natural kind of conundrum, but we can turn it all around. That's the message and the memory that I have at the end of your talk, that relief that we'll all be okay if we know the things you're about to share with us.
Exactly that. And I think every time I speak to particularly a parent about things like this, the very first thing that they say to me is, hold on, before we even talk about me, am I effing my kids up? And I'm always like, well, when you understand psychology, when you understand how the brain works, when you understand how behavioral patterns work, like, yes, we are absolutely creating the path that our kids will go down. And some of that will be positive and some of that will be negative. The thing that I always say for any parents that are listening is the best thing that you can do is what you think is right at the time, but be prepared that if they come to you at a later stage and say, this is my experience, these are my feelings, validate them. A lot of adult women that I work with now, we talk about the values and beliefs that they have and where they came from. And one of the most frustrating things that they tell me, and I'm frustrated for them, they're frustrated for themselves, is that when they go back to their parents, to their caregivers, and they say, okay, but this situation made me feel like this, they're met with defense, they're met with justification, they're met with, you don't know what it was like. And that conversation really stops growth. So what I would say for anyone that is a parent thinking, oh my God, what am I doing to my kids? As long as you're doing the best that you can with what you've got now, and you're prepared to review that and listen to their experiences when they bring them to you, I don't think we can go too far wrong.
That is reassuring, and I know we'll have some parents or parents of the future coming on and listen as well. We also have many guys as well in the membership, so this really does relate to them as well. You're specifically niche down, and we talk about niche all the time on the podcast and in the membership about niching. So you're specifically niching to women, but this works for everybody, am I right?
Absolutely. So this work is for absolutely everybody. I talk very female gendered language because I work primarily with women. So apologies if that causes any offense to anybody. It's just the language and terminology that I use. But this work is very much something that is carried out across all genders. The thing that we really need to be specific about when we use language and when we talk about the frameworks and the models that we're going to talk about is men respond differently to women. Women are much more complex beings. We have 2 cycles that we go through, whereas men only have 1. The way that a woman's identity is formulated is different to a man's, and that again primarily is because of patriarch. So although this work is absolutely for everybody, there are points of it that will relate more to women than it will men, but I can also give some, if you're a man, this is the way that you would deal with this type of thing, because they are different.
Yeah, no, and I think, that was eloquently put, and I really appreciate you explaining that. And again, light bulbs, I'm sure people are listening. We're in society, men and women, and, we've all thought for generations we're different. So yes, we definitely are. And it'll be interesting to see and hear some of the differences and some of the things that maybe come up from this conversation. So we've learned very, very briefly that it starts at the beginning. It's out of our control to a degree then, isn't it? So what's your thoughts on that, and then moving forward with those nuances that we're gifted?
So I think the thing that we really need to be mindful of and always hold in the forefront of our mind is that every single person on this planet, from the moment that we're born, is conditioned into the family that we're born into. And so what happens is we develop our values, we develop our beliefs, we develop our skills, our potential, like all of that big wide world vision that we have comes from the family that we're born into and we're raised into. And so what that does is it creates this little voice in the back of our head that tells us, how capable we are, how capable we're not, how, whether we're good enough, whether we're not good enough. And I'm sure, there's a million different ways to talk about this. Everybody will relate to it. Everybody has this voice. And this is, again, where men and women are different. Women really have this voice turned up on high volume. Men have it, but it creeps in very differently. But that voice ultimately is the narrator of the life you're supposed to live based on the values and beliefs that you have been taught. And the real interesting thing, or at least I think it's really interesting, is it doesn't matter whether you came from the absolute worst of starts or whether you came from the absolute best of starts. The whole point of the way that our default identity, our script, that voice is created, it's created to keep us doing the same things that we've always done. So whether you have come from a really incredible, loving, supportive, wealthy, affluent, educated family or not, we all end up in this place where we question whether we're good enough, whether we can move forward. We all question the value that we hold in ourselves. We question the value the world has for us. And that, for me, became a real turning point. Before I started teaching what I teach now, I lived this. So I lived 30 years of my life constantly feeling like I wasn't good enough, like I wasn't capable enough. And it didn't matter how much I did, I needed to do more. And I didn't always recognize that I was proving myself, but sometimes I really did recognize that I was proving myself. And I'd wear it like a badge of honor, like, you watch this, I'll prove you wrong. But again, that is part of the conditioning. Anyway, I did that for 30 years of my life. And then I had a conversation one day with somebody who had had the absolute opposite of upbringings that I had had, and was a lot wealthier than I was. I considered her a lot smarter, a lot more educated. She was further along in life. She had all of the things already that I had on my vision board for the next 5 years. And we sat down and had this conversation. And here she was telling me the same things that about her that I was telling myself about me. I don't feel good enough. I've got imposter syndrome. Who cares what I've got to say? You know, I record a TikTok video, and well, at the time, I think they were Musically still. She was like, Cally, I record a Musically video or a Vine. And I'm like, who gives a shit about what I've got to say? And in that moment, there literally was this little switch in my head that thought, well, if we all experience so many different things, and yet we all still feel not quite enough inside, why is that? Where does it come from? And how the hell do we change it? And that really started the journey that I'm on now.
It sounds amazing. I've got goose pimples because we can all relate. I went through childhood on stage, show up like a showgirl, showing off is safe. My world and many of my performerpreneur world, we were allowed to be big and bold and loud and perform. But still, there's like this double-edged sword. I still feel like I can and I should, but then there's exactly what you're saying. Sit down and be quiet, Nicole. Like, who wants to hear it? We all, whatever background. So I can definitely relate, and I think everybody listening 100% can. And so, well, you tell me, where do we go next? Because I know this conversation could go on, and it's vast and it's very in depth. And so we're trying to give kind of enough, but there's no way we can do everything. So I'm going to let you lead, Cally.
Thanks, I love that. I think the very first thing that I always tell people is, what's stopping you choosing 10 right now? And what I mean by this is, I always give this number of, from 1 to 10, how do you rate yourself? How do you feel about yourself? And just by the very nature of the complexities of the people that I work with, I'll get anywhere from, less than a 0, I do not feel anything right now, all the way up to a 9, my business is smashing it. But the thing that absolutely amazes me is, no matter the range of women I speak to, nobody ever tells me 10, ever. And I always find that really interesting, because I almost feel like those that are at a 9 are at a far worse place than those that are at a 3 or 4, because at a 3 or 4, you've still got loads of hope. You've still got loads of, if I just do this, if I just do that. If you're at a 9, that's pretty much it. You've done everything that you can do. And the only thing that's stopping you getting that 10 is that voice in the back of your head. And that is a much worse place to be than still thinking you've got hope. So usually I start by saying to people, and if you've ever seen any of my classes, you'll know this, I always say, on an average day in your life, not on your best day when your tits and your teeth look amazing, and not on your worst day when you feel like an absolute bag of shite, but on an average day in your life, if you had to stand and look at yourself in the cold, hard light of day, what would you rate yourself in your life currently out of 10? And then the thing that you need to know is, whatever number you have landed on is because the little voice in the back of your head is telling you that that's what you deserve currently. That's the life that you believe that you should have. And you've still got so many more things you need to do to be able to bridge that gap between where you are and the 10 that you want to be. When in fact, all of that is completely wrong. All you have to do is make a decision to choose to be 10 and back yourself every single day. And what happens, and I see this so much, especially women that come into my world, they're like, oh my God, Cally, I'm so motivated. I'm so excited. I'm going to choose 10. This is amazing. And they wake up the next day and they're in their mirror and they're like, I'm a 10. And that little voice is like, no, you're not. And because for a lot of us, especially your group of amazing people, you show up and you're big and you're bold and you are in the spotlight, you'll have the confidence and the courage to go again. And you'll be like, I am a 10. And then that voice will start to give you all the logical reasons why you're not a 10. And because they're logical, you'll start to believe them. And so you'll go back into yourself and you will stay the number that it's already assigned you. And this is where so many people live their life. And the difference really is it isn't even really about what you value or what you believe. It's about what you choose in the moment, and what you choose in the moment and you continue to choose becomes your values and your beliefs. And so if you just decide to start showing up as the 10 version of you, as the wholest version of you that you are right now, and you do that and you do that again, and when somebody says, who the fuck does she think she is to be doing that, you still choose the 10. And when somebody said, she's up herself, or she's arrogant, or she's this, keep choosing. And you get to a place where you choose it so much that it then becomes who you are. And when you live life from a place of knowing, believing, and valuing yourself as a 10, the whole world behaves differently towards you. Your landscape of what is possible just becomes absolutely insane.
I'm on the edge of my seat. If you're watching this on YouTube, I literally moved forward. I was like, tell me more. I'm loving this. I could feel the intense pulse through me. Like, I'm coming for my 10. Gosh, I mean, that really excites me. I think everybody listening, you and I hope you don't mind me saying, we're probably Marmite individually to people. So people will be listening and loving this, or they'll be like, oh my God, I can see why Nicole's chosen her, and they can just go have a little love fest together elsewhere. They're not my cup of tea. I understand this, but the people that do get what I'm hearing and feel the same will absolutely know why currently I'm working with Cally, because your passion, your knowledge, but your values in this self-belief, they just shine so strongly through. How do you put that into words in terms of how would you describe your values now, and how would you suggest that we try and work out ours once we've become the person we want to be, and we're dulling down that voice and showing up?
That's a really great question. I love that. So for me, and I think just going back to what you were saying a minute ago about us being Marmite, like I have this a lot. People either love me or they hate me. There's never any in between. You're never going to get somebody that's like, oh, Cally's all right, isn't she? Like, no, they either like, oh my God, she's amazing, or they're like, that bitch. Like, and I imagine, Nicole, that you are similar in how people respond to you. And the one thing that I always say is, as humans, when we have an adverse reaction to somebody, it's usually for two reasons. The first reason is usually because we trigger them. We are holding up a mirror that reflects to them all of the things that they don't see in themselves and want to see in themselves. We are such a trigger for them because our light is so bright, it literally blinds them, because they haven't cultivated that self-value, that self-trust, and that self-belief enough yet to be in our presence. And I hate that. Not for me, but for them, because I think if every woman felt the way that you and I feel, the world would be entirely different. The other reason that people take a dislike to people is because their values and their beliefs don't align. And for me, most of the people that will be like, oh, Cally and Nicole are Marmite, it has to be the first reason, because they don't know us well enough to know if their values and beliefs align with ours. So for those that are there right now, that, will screenshot this, will, take recordings of it, that will pass it around their mates, like, I know that you're doing that to validate the insecurity that you feel right now. And I just want you to know you don't have to live life that way. Like, we can get you past that. And I say that because I've been there. I've been one of the women that has taken a screenshot of a conversation I've seen, and I've given it to the rest of my little girl group when we've all been insecure, and I've been like, have you seen what she said? Have you seen what she's wearing? And let me tell you, they were some of the darkest, most awful days of my life. So don't have to do that. Like, let's move past that. So that is the next bit. The next bit then is about, what do we value and how do we find out what our values are? And for me personally, that has been a real journey, because for the longest time, I don't really think I valued anything other than money. I really thought that money was going to change my entire life. I thought the minute I had it, I would feel different. People would see me differently. My whole life would change. And I spent so much of my time with the value intrinsically linked to money and the belief that money would change my entire life, that I didn't know for the longest time what values were, what mine were, or how I cultivated new ones. And so for anybody that's sat here now thinking, oh my God, I don't know what my values are, you're not alone. Like, I think a lot of people are like that. I think one of the easiest places to start is by yourself with a pen and paper, and just thinking about who you are now as a person, really honestly, and who you want to become. And for me, the values that I have now, ironically, are things like integrity. And I say ironically because I think the word integrity is really overused. And I think a lot of people that use it actually don't know what integrity means. Integrity is absolutely one of my values, because to me, it means that whether you see me online, whether you see me on person, whether you see me with my kids as a mother, whether you see me with my husband as a wife, like, no matter what role you see me in, I will treat you the same that I would in any other role. I behave the same as I would in any version of me. And so to me, to have that integrity, to know that when people meet me, they're like, oh my God, she is who she says she is massive to me. And how holding that as a value really anchors me back. Every decision I make, I ask myself, am I doing this for the greater good of what I believe in and what I value? Or am I doing it because the bank might be looking like it needs a bit of a top up and here's a thing I can do? Or am I doing it because I think that my social media will be like, oh my God, Cally's doing that? Like, so having a value and holding a value really gives you a guide for your life. Other things that I really value and are high on my values list are honesty. And I hold honesty interlinked with justice, which is probably something I need to do a bit of work around. I am so honest and so transparent, sometimes to my own detriment. And because of that, I also then, when I see injustice in the world, it's usually because of dishonesty. And so I have a real adverse reaction. That's not right. That's not fair. That's not honest. That's not with integrity. And so my values, much like anybody's values, can be so strong that sometimes we can be blinded by them. But I think the easiest place to start is honestly just to sit down and write a list of all the things that you are, all the things that you want to be, and then really pick. And you can have as many values as you want. I've probably got hundreds that I don't even realize, but my top ones are the ones that anchor me back to, is this the person that I want to be? And does this get me closer to the woman that I'm becoming every day? And for me, honesty and integrity are two of my top values. I think that when something is a value so deeply ingrained in you, you cannot escape it. And I think whether this is the 10th time you're listening to me or the first time you're listening to me, I think it becomes really evident that I am who I say I am. And I think that's because I know that those two pillars, that integrity and that honesty, are my values and they link back. And I think you can really tell when other people know their values, they just come through without them having to do anything.
So if you're listening, listeners, and you've got this far, and you're in my world, and now you've been introduced to Cally, I hope, because I'm listening, Cally, and I'm thinking, this is a reflection of me. Like, I'm drawn to you because of this version, because of these values. What you're saying resonates, and I hope that my world and my listeners and my people are thinking, oh my God, that sounds like Nicole. Like, that's how I interpret her values. Because I certainly do feel absolutely the same. And I've never heard you say yours out loud. So I'm wondering, my next question is, are you attracted to people, like you're saying, you're repelled by people that shine a light up to the things that you haven't become or you haven't achieved or you don't align with in values? So I'm guessing, I mean, it seems to make complete sense. You're attracted to the people who do align with the values and who you see yourself in as well. And it can be a great thing, but can it be a bad thing as well? What's your thoughts around that? You're drawn to your people who are the same as you, I guess.
Yeah, and I really feel like I naturally attract and repel based on how strong my values are, because they do shine through. The challenge with that, exactly like you've just said, is that can be both a negative and a positive. The things that I personally look out for when I am attracting people is, one, am I creating an echo chamber for myself? And I'm always really conscious about that. I don't want to be in a room of 100 people where I say X, Y, and Z, and they're like, oh my God, yeah. I want to be in a room where I say X, Y, and Z, and somebody goes, but what does that mean? Like, do you really think that? And so I think I definitely attract people that are with it, that they have integrity and they have honesty that runs through them. And I think that's what bonds us together. But I also definitely have people that will play within the lines of that. And I think naturally, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, certainly as a performer, you will know about the lines of, what we show and what we don't show. And I think it's the nuances and the intricacies in that that really bring our people to us.
And I think one of the values would be curiosity, because actually you want to create that space, like I do, that people do want to grow and be curious and learn and develop and have conversations and have differences of opinion. That to me is part of the growth process, to learn and to converse and to be curious and find out. So we've discussed where they start, the values, how we identify them, what we're attracted to in others. And that's a tip that I give in the last episode. Have a little look at the people that you do enjoy spending time with, you do respect, and see what you think their values are. Because like we've just said, if you're drawn to people, there's most likely because your values align on the first level. So if you were to be sat there thinking, Cally, or if I was to be sat there, or the listeners were sat there thinking, well, I'm not really a fan of my values, they aren't serving me, and you've just granted me kind of that relief that they weren't mine in the first place, they've been gifted to me, I want to change them. We've touched on that's absolutely possible. So where would you start with that, and what would your advice be to anyone listening who's thinking, okay, they weren't mine in the first place, they're not serving me, I'm going to sit down and work out what I want to be, then what do we do next?
Great question. So our values directly link to our emotions, our behaviors, and our attitudes. So as an example, I really valued money for the longest time in my life, which meant that my attitude and my behaviors were driven by the need, the desire, and the want to earn it at all costs. So any other beliefs or values that I had would be sacrificed in that ambition to just earn the most that I could. I also held a really deeply ingrained value that working hard was the answer to everything. And I held that value for a number of reasons. One, I very much grew up in a family that when I worked hard, I was rewarded, and they would say things that would make me feel good. They'd say things like, God, our Cally's a grafter. Doesn't our Cally work hard? Like, Jesus, have you seen how much work she's done today? So all of that created this value in me that when I work hard, then, you know, that makes me good. When I work hard, people recognize me. And also because I had this value around money, I genuinely believed that the harder I worked, the more money I would make. So I lived in that cycle for a lot of years, which ultimately ended up making me feel not good enough, not worthy, like I could never move fast enough. I couldn't earn enough money. I couldn't earn it quick enough. And once I realized, exactly like you've just said, that they are not serving me, they are not benefiting me, I really had to look at, okay, so what behaviors am I doing that reinforce that value? And I was working every day like a dog. Anytime there was overtime, I would grab it. Like, even if there wasn't overtime, paid overtime, I'd be doing it because I would want somebody to say, God, Cally works hard, doesn't she? And then maybe I get a bonus or a promotion at the end of the month. And so we really have to look at what behaviors are we doing on repeat every day that are reinforcing those values. So if you decide right now, okay, I've recognized 3 values that do not benefit me, and actually instead I want to have this, this, and this, the very first thing I would do is say, map out literally like a paint by numbers. If I had this value, how would I feel? And if I had this value and I felt this way, what would my behavior be? And whatever those behaviors are, start taking them now. You have to take the action before the rest catches up. And that is the beautiful thing about also being conscious beings. You know, so much of what we do is in our unconscious and our subconscious, but so much of what creates who we are and the magic of being humans is we have this consciousness. Use it. Use that consciousness to create the behaviors that you want. You can't see me right now, but I'm literally on my desk mapping this out. I'm like, do this. Like, create the value in your head. So if the value is, you know, and let's take something super hard but super easy. Let's say that your number one value wants to be like honesty. And when I say this, I think a lot of people think that they are honest people, but the worst thing that we do is we're not honest with ourselves. So we have this superficial honesty around the fact that I won't tell a lie, like I won't break the law, like I won't do, and those things aren't really honesty. Honesty is about being able to look at yourself and the people around you and know the truth. So if you decide that, okay, I really want to make honesty a core value of mine, the next thing that you have to ask yourself is, well, how am I currently acting in an honest way and in a not honest way? And what do I need to do differently? And that was literally one of the very first things I did, was I asked myself, where am I not being honest? And the list grew quicker than I expected it to. And there were lots of places that I wasn't being honest. I wasn't being honest about what I wanted. I wasn't being honest about what I needed. I wasn't being honest about how I felt. So yes, I was doing honest things like not telling lies and not breaking the law and not breaking the rules. But in a lot of ways, I wasn't being honest. I didn't communicate with my partner about what my needs were, so therefore they weren't met. And then I held resentment for that. So that wasn't honest of me. I wasn't being honest about my parenting choices, how I was raising my children, if I was doing that in alignment with what I really wanted. I wasn't being honest with myself about how I felt and what I wanted in the world. And I almost had this conflict between cognitively, consciously, mentally, I had a vision board and I knew I wanted those things, but inside, I also knew I didn't really deserve them. I didn't really feel like they were ever going to be possible. And that's a dishonesty. There's a conflict there. So when we talk about honesty as a core value, you really have to get brutal in your level of honesty around what actions, attitudes, and behaviors do I have that are reinforcing this version of this value, and what do I need to be doing differently? Does that
I could
help?
listen to you. Yeah, it does. And I could listen to you all day. And my thoughts are going towards right back to the beginning of the conversation when we said something along the lines of not everybody listening will know what their values are. And my thoughts have gone full circle because I feel, having listened to that, Cally, that even if we think we know what our values are, and the people that definitely have, you know, been honest and said they don't to themselves, we have never done enough work on them. in my opinion. And I've done work on my values. Like, I feel like I know them. I feel like they shine through my business. I'm hoping that, you know, they come across in who I am and who I try to be. But I've never done enough work listening to you. And so I think it's a wonderful topic. And I think it's something that I'm encouraging my listeners and my members and my performerpreneurs to do, to work out what their values are. But now I'm wondering if I need to be like, and you need to go even deeper. Listen to Cally and go even deeper, because this is a lot of work, but it's going to hold that foundation of everything that follows so strongly that I've got this even bigger passion to understand it even more, even before we had this conversation. And I was already passionate about the idea because of your last talk. Just kind of up-leveled that understanding and that knowledge that we need to do this work to become the 10, to do the things, to show to the world, and to change if we need to. And that is possible with work. And the whole podcast, Cally, keeps coming back to this, like, you know, Insta vs reality, we all look like we're doing all the things, and it's really easy, but it all takes work. And you have to put in the work to become the person and the business and the side hustle you want to be. I could talk for ages. So if people wanted to do this work and to listen to you and be guided by you, where do they find you on in the world, on socials, website, all that? Just drop that into the conversation, because I know people will be keen to hear more.
Love that, thank you. So I'm happy to be friends with everybody. Come find me on Facebook. It's yeah, I'm gonna have to full name myself now. So come and find me on Facebook. It's Cally Louise Stewart. If you come find me on Instagram, it is I am Cally Stewart. Or come and join one of my groups. One of my main communities is Elevated Female Friendships, because I think, again, that's an area, like when we talk about values, I think for a lot of women, we undervalue each other, and that causes these fractional relationships that we end up having with each other. So female friendships is like an area I'm so passionate about. So any of those spaces, come and find me. But if you find me on my main Facebook, we can go from there.
Absolutely. And I'll drop all of the links in the blurb below. Gosh, it's been a huge conversation. How do you think we should round that off? What light bulb, what action, what does your legacy from this podcast want to be? What do you want people to go home with after listening today?
Do you know what? I would really love, and I said this to you a moment ago when we were talking, like, if every single woman on this planet felt whole about who she was, felt her 10 out of 10 self every single day, we would live on an entirely different planet to what we live now. And the world is, and I you know, and I don't want to get into the intricacies of it because I could go on for hours, but the world is not set up to support us feeling like our 10 out of 10 selves. Even the men in the world, like, the systems are so outdated that even modern men are starting to go like, oh my God, where do I fit in? What does this look like? And I just think if we just collectively decided to wake up tomorrow, open our eyes and choose to be 10 out of 10, regardless of what the world told us we were, we would change instantly, not just ourselves, but the people around us, the systems that we live within, the communities that we have. And that would have such mass impact on our own legacies, our children, our families. Like, and the most difficult thing about it is believing you can choose it. Like, and that to me is just, because once that switch flips, it doesn't unflip. Once I decided, okay, I can choose anything I want, I'm just going to choose 10. And I just kept choosing 10. And no matter what anybody told me, I was like, so what? I'm a 10. And at the time that I chose 10, and I think, and I'm so sorry, I'm taking this on a tangent now, but I really want to be clear about this. At the time that I woke up and said, okay, fine, if I can choose anything, I'm just going to choose 10. I lived in a council house. I couldn't afford to have carpet on my stairs, and I'd lived in this house for 5 years with carpetless stairs. We had next to no money. I literally had a job that paid me minimum wage. Like, we had top-ups, benefit top-ups, like you name it, we had it. I had all the reasons not to choose 10. And let me tell you, there were people every day that reminded me of that. And I decided that no matter what all of those material things were, I wanted to be a person that lived my life knowing that I was worthy, I deserved my desires, and that if I was going to live at any time on this planet, I was going to live it as the version of me that I wanted to be no matter what. And so the world will tell you all of the reasons that you cannot be a 10. And I just want you to know that all you have to do is choose and commit to keep choosing it, and your whole life will change because of it.
Huge pimples. I know that my performerpreneurs will be massively inspired by this conversation. I know that their minds will be whirring. I know that you'll have an influx of people following you and wanting more of Cally. And just listeners, while you're sat ruminating and thinking and taking all of this in, just spare a tiny thought for how this will create such a ripple through your business if you can do this work now. You will not go off on tangents and directions. You'll create a side hustle that aligns with you, that you enjoy, that is you, and that works nicely and seamlessly alongside everything else you want to do. This fundamental foundational part of the process, now exaggerated and needing even more work than I first thought. But I definitely believe it is part of something that not many of us get told to do when we're starting out, and it could be a game changer for you. I'm going to leave it there because, as you can tell, Cally and I can talk, but you can come and work with Cally, go and work with Cally, over on her socials, in her spaces. Come and find me if you've got more questions in the Performerpreneur groups, spaces, free groups, memberships, podcast, book, you name it, we've got it going on. And together, Cally and I will get you to where you want to be, because there is no competition here. It's all collaboration with me and my experts. And so if we can help you, we absolutely wholeheartedly want to do that. Thank you so much, Cally. It's been gorgeous.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye. Okay, guys, that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed the show. Thank you for joining me here on the Showbiz Side Hustle podcast. So until next time, please do take a little bit of action, that very first step, and make sure that you are doing something for you and your Showbiz side hustle this week to move you forward and get you heading quickly and swiftly and strategically towards success.